Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innovabuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome today to the Innovabuzz podcast, all the way from San Diego in California, David Hirschfeld, who's a 35-year software development veteran. He's the CEO and founder of Techies Inc. and the creator of the Launch First methodology, helping startups go from concept to cash flow quickly. Welcome to the Innovabuzz podcast, David. It's a real privilege
Uh,
to have you as my guest.
yeah, thank you. The privilege is mine, Jürgen.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I know you've got a background in physics, and I found it fascinating how you combine that and your passion for software development with your commitment to helping startups succeed. Uh, Before we get on to some more in-depth questions, can you share with us what drives you in this mission and what impact you make in the world, David?
Yeah, that's thanks for that question. What drives me in this in helping startups is that I've worked with so many that I've seen fail that should not have failed, in my opinion. Uh, and I've worked with several that have really succeeded, and the ones that succeed versus the ones that fail, they both follow similar playbooks to their predecessors. So the ones that succeed follow a playbook of focusing on the problem and spending their time with their customers and understanding that what they're doing is building a business and that needs to generate revenue to survive. And the ones that fail don't understand those things. They love the product, not the problem. They spent a lot of their time trying to realize their vision and become a unicorn instead of the nuts and bolts that they need to create a revenue generating business. And by the time they realize that they're approaching it wrong, it's very often too late. They start to pivot and panic and eventually fail after several years, after having spent an awful lot of money in the process. So this is what drives me in the passion to help startups.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that, and you mentioned a lot of the things that contribute to failure there. You've probably had failure yourself, right?
Oh,
In your
I
own
have.
businesses. Yeah.
I started Techies 18 years ago, and it was on the heels of a failure. So I had two software startups prior to Techies. The first one was a success. I built it up for 8 years. It was sort of a mini ERP product. We ended up with 800 customers in 22 countries and sold it to a publicly traded firm 8 years after we founded it. Then several years later, we founded another product specifically for wholesale auto traders. And instead of following the playbook that made me successful the first time, I went the route that we hear VCs pushing, which is try to get critical mass and then raise money from investors. And there was no reason for me to have to have done that because I was getting traction from customers who would have paid for the product if I had started to charge them for it and created basically a value-based business right from the beginning. Anyway, and I did get an offer for investment, but they wanted more equity than I thought was realistic, but I didn't get another offer after that. And that, 9 months later, I decided to close up and I started Techies. And that
Hmm.
was 18 years ago. So I understand both sides. And I didn't even realize what mistakes I made the second time around that were that if I'd followed a similar playbook to my first time, I would have succeeded with that company. And I didn't realize it until I had worked with probably 30 or 40 other startups and watched them make sort of the similar mistakes, except for the ones that were successful, which looked a lot like my first company. And then all of a sudden I had this epiphany about the things that really are critically important for being successful. I'm not saying raising money is necessarily a bad thing, but for most startups, it's unachievable, or it puts them in such a on their heels position that they can never recover from it. So, and we could have a whole show about just that. Um,
Yeah.
um, but that's probably not the most important thing that we could talk about in terms of founders' perspective. Existing companies that launch new fall into the same traps because they don't realize why they were successful to begin with. uh,
Mm.
uh, just like I didn't.
So, yeah, it's fascinating. You had a success and then followed it up with a failure by not following, you see, not following the same playbook, but you didn't, at the time, you possibly didn't realize you were doing that. You thought this is a different company, so I'm following a different path. What are some of the critical things that are part of that playbook that contribute to the success?
So the most critical thing was getting something early where I could test product market fit. So with my first company, we had a concept for a product. We created a very simple thing in 6 weeks, and then we put it on the market. And we charged for with our customers from the very beginning. We didn't charge a lot, but we did charge, and we started getting sales. Not immediately, but it wasn't very long. It was only about 4 weeks before we started getting sales on that product. Uh, and then we listened to the customers and heard the problems that they were struggling with in their businesses and just kept following that process. And in the process of doing that, we built a company. And we built infrastructure, we built a sales and marketing engine, and we built a reputation in our industry to the point where we got acquired by another company without seeking to be acquired. So that was the difference. Everything we did was based on the idea that we're solving a specific problem and that it's a problem that people had a clear articulated value around in terms of what it cost them financially and how it impacted them from a perception perspective, because those are two critical factors in launching a product. Anything that you're going to charge for, those are two critical factors that you need to understand, and they're distinct factors. One is being able to establish the cost because of a problem in terms of some kind of algorithm that derives that cost. And the other is how much does that person feel impacted, the stakeholder who's going to make that buying decision, how much do they personally feel impacted because of that problem in a way that threatens them somehow, separate from the cost, because those numbers don't necessarily correlate. You could have a very low cost and a high perceived impact, and the opposite is true. So you need to understand those two things, and you're looking for high perception in terms of how you're impacted and high cost. And those are your early adopters.
Hmm. And so I'm guessing that with those early adopters, you're able then to take their feedback and improve the product um, on an ongoing basis, and then
Mhm.
increase the price as well because now you've got a much more refined product. So version 2.0, let's say.
Right. Yeah, you create a roadmap, you create a priority list. The roadmap has new chargeable features as well as enhancements to existing features. And where those two, and the thing is, what you're trying to nail down when you have a new product and you're trying to generate revenue is product market fit. And product market fit means that enough people will pay money for the product that you're selling versus what it costs you to acquire those customers, and that you can get a 3-to-1 ratio between a lifetime value of a customer versus the cost of acquisition. On average, 3-to-1. That number can vary depending on how long the lifetime is calculated with a customer. But in general, you need that because you need the margin so that you can invest that margin back into accelerating the growth of your company. Uh, uh, so that's product market fit. Nothing else establishes product market fit except for sales. Doesn't matter how many discovery interviews you do, because unless you are just a brilliant interviewer, people don't give you the honest answers when it comes to will they buy your product. The only honest answer you get is they write a check, for that product, or they give you a credit card or whatever. Now, sometimes or often once the product is in the market, now you have to make sure that product is delivering the value and that people are engaging with that product. And that is product solution fit. So you basically got to make sure you've got product market fit so you can sell the product and you've got a company that will generate revenue. And as soon as it hits the street, now you've got to nail down product solution fit so that you can extend the lifetime value of those customers and reduce the drop off rate of customers.
Yeah, yeah. So there's two critical aspects, right? The first one is getting into the market quickly, and that's almost your substitute for investors because it's customers now
Right.
producing the cash flow to continue the business. And then the second one is keeping those customers on board by making sure you're actually solving the problem that they want solved.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. Yeah. And people think that, well, I can't give them a really, let's say it's a brand new product and you want to make a high value, maybe you're doing pre-launch sales, which is what I really promote. You don't have a product yet. Maybe you haven't even started developing it, but you've got a design prototype and you've got the plan and you want to nail down product market fit. Go out and do pre-launch sales with your product. Make sure, figure out who that early adopter is, which niche, just pick one niche that you're going to focus on, because the smaller and tighter a niche you can identify that has a high perceived impact because of the problem you're solving and a high cost, right? Because the perceived impact means you can get their attention easily. The cost
Mm.
means you can charge more for it. So that's why you need to understand those two numbers independently. And then go after that market with a pre-launch sale, offer them some killer deal. So depending on what the product is and what the market is, those deals can look very different. Some might have to do with implementation. You give them free implementation costs and support, where like in a clinical trial software, for example, where implementation costs usually cost more than the software itself. Or you give them a lifetime license on a product that they know they need and it solves a really significant high cost problem. And I know I get a lot lifetime license, then I can't generate any more revenue from that customer. I'm giving away future revenue. It's like, no, yeah, you're giving away some future revenue, but not all of it, because there'll be other products that you add on to that over time that you can charge for. But more importantly, let's say you could sell 500 customers in a pre-launch sale, give them a lifetime license. They pay a year and a half of subscription fee in advance for $1,000, and you sell 500 people in advance. You just generated $500,000 from invested customers who will really be invested beta users. And you probably have given away an immeasurable fraction of a percent of your market. Now, to raise the same amount of money from a seed investor, none of that work you do towards raising that money is moving your business forward. You accept getting the money itself, and you've just given 10, 15, 20, 25% of your equity away instead of an immeasurable fraction of a percent. And your
Mm.
business is no farther forward, moved along forward. So to me, this is a really effortless equation. If you can get but it's hard. It seems so easy to just pitch to investors,
Yeah.
right? Which takes a long time, and it's really hard to actually get investors to give you money. But it's really hard to ask customers for money before you even have a product. It feels hard. And it's scary, because what if they say no? What does that mean? Does that
Mm.
mean I have a product anybody will? So founders put this revenue generation piece off for sometimes 2, 3 years before they actually ask anybody for money. And it's like a death knell for them.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds so straightforward, and yet, yeah, people always think that the investor route is the classical way to go, and sometimes, I mean, it's not black and white, is it? It's not one or the other. So you can still come back, but I imagine it's a lot easier to go to investors and say, "Would you like to invest in this business?" If you have the first part of what you described as a playbook in place. You've got those 1,000 customers, you've got a prototype in the marketplace, and then it would be much easier to get investors as well if you need more capital to move
Right.
forward at that stage.
And I'm not against raising capital from investors at the right time and with the
Mm,
right leverage. If you got 1,000 customers, you've proven traction, you've proven that you can generate a revenue model, then it's a whole different discussion with an
Mm.
investor, and it's way easier to get traction from investors when you're trying to pitch to investors. And then you can use that money to accelerate a model that you already know works. That's way different than just getting money to try to launch your product and to generate your initial revenue when you don't have a model that works yet because you haven't tested it. And people think discovery interviews that you can nail down a lot of this and research. And it just, the only thing that nails us down is that you can prove in a repeated, predictable fashion that you can generate revenue from sales.
Mm. Yeah, really important point there.
Mm.
All right. So, talk to us a little bit then about Techies, the business, and what you do there, and how that how how that influenced your approach to the playbook, the development of the playbook, and the lessons you've learned from failure that you took into that as well.
So yeah, so I use the term playbook um, um, to mean repeatable workflow that you can document. And very often those workflows are very nuanced. So, um, uh, uh, but a playbook documents those nuances. So what happens with a lot of companies and when people really struggle to scale, um, is they may have a process that works, but what makes it work is somebody's expertise. So it's basically
Mm.
stuck in tribal knowledge. So you have different people in your organizations that are really good at certain things, but to find somebody else that's going to be just as good at doing something like that is going to be really hard because you're not even sure what they're doing and how they're doing it, that they're so good at it because because they figured out all the nuances and things that happen in all these various cases to make that thing work. So the first thing that founders should do is look to see what they have documented in terms of repeatable processes. And then and if they don't have something documented and there's a key player that executes on that workflow, have them document the workflow at a high level with all the main steps. Then have them start to document all the nuances as all of the edge cases come in and they handle it differently than the standard. Have them add, in this case, do this, in that case, do that. And and do it in a centralized way so that somebody new coming in, that person with the tribal knowledge can give them an overview of the job and point them to the playbook for executing their job. And now they've got a reference material that anytime something happens, they can look it up and continue to build their knowledge and learn how to do it and even add to that playbook over time as they identify and resolve problems that are nuanced in this workflow. So, and by doing this, you're creating value in your company because anybody, like if you're looking to build a company that can run and grow and scale independently of you, you need these playbooks in all different aspects of your company. And if somebody eventually is coming to look at acquiring you, then you can show them how you've documented your ability to scale and how they can just take this and run with it without being dependent on you or without being dependent on any one key player in your organization. And so your business is worth a lot more that way. So that's what I mean by playbooks. A lot, one of the things we do is we look at these workflows for companies, and then we come up with automation strategies using AI and workflow automation techniques to automate these playbooks, because then that takes that tribal knowledge out of even the idea of documentation and turns it into something that can be nuanced in a repeatable way with AI, because AI has that ability to distill the nuances from a workflow and treat each activity as an independent activity with the guidelines and the understanding of how it's been done in the past successfully.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a really important thing, isn't it? I mean, I call what you've described there process documentation, but the playbook type thing is pretty much that in my mind. It's really just describing the workflow and giving you the ability to hand off work to somebody else that doesn't necessarily have the experience in that particular field, has the expertise required, and then has this playbook. Okay, here's how we do it. Step one, step two, step three. If this happens, do that. If that happens, do this. So I guess and one of the things, I mean, you touched on AI there. One of the things that I did very early with AI is taking some of those workflows and getting them written up in a much more structured way and a much more logical way, because often my processes would be kind of the haphazard outline of how I did it. And sometimes it would make a lot more sense to, instead of doing step 6 after step 5, doing step 6 earlier, because it made everything else easier. And
Right.
some of those things AI actually identified, which is quite amazing. So, it is a fascinating area. Talk to us a little bit more about how AI then comes into the aspect of the automation part.
Well, in a couple different ways. One, it will help you build the automation. If you're a software development team, or if you're using a workflow automation tool that has AI implemented, it can help you create that automated workflow, and even build in some of the nuances in it. For us, we're using it in every aspect of our business right now. We're using it to generate code. In fact, we just finished an internal system that we benchmarked and experimented with different techniques for generating code, because we're trying to because we want to get to a very high level of acceleration from what we've had in the past. We've been using AI to generate code for the last year and a half or so in different varying ways. And I've been involved with AI for about 5 years in other ways. But for generating code in the last year and a half, we've gotten the team involved in a deeper way for using that in the code generation process. But we've had various levels of success, which seems to be getting much bigger and bigger. So today we're about a 75% acceleration from where we were this time 6 months ago, building systems. I want to get, by the end of Q2, I want to get to 90%. And by the end of the year, I want to get to like 95%, which would be a 20 times increase. In other words, it's something that might have taken 20 weeks to build before, would now take us a build to build it and put it. I mean, would take us a week to build it and put it in production, which is huge, right? So something you spend a year on, right now you're spending 25 days, basically 3 weeks on. And it can be very sophisticated and nuanced, but the UI, the back end, the distributed nature of it, creating it as a very scalable system, all of these aspects of software development, and we build systems that are very scalable. And so there's a lot of architecture that goes into it. The things we're building using AI are all, following these architectural principles of microservices, cloud-based, serverless type of approach of building software.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there that I think people kind of forget about when they talk about AI in general, and you hear a lot, oh, AI is going to take my job. But what you've described there is AI is going to transform my job in a way that what used to take me 6 months or 9 months to do, I can now do in a week,
Right.
which is a massive value add, right? You can whether it's software development or whether it's something else, I can take a product that I can get a product into market in a week rather than 9 months.
So I look at it like this, because people have a reasonable fear of AI displacing their profession. That's not an unreasonable fear, but what it's doing is it's expanding the sphere. So let me explain what I mean. So when the internet started to really happen in the 90s and early 2000s, there was this idea that all of a sudden all of this commerce was going to end up just being internet commerce, right? Which would eliminate so many jobs and brick and mortar and all that, which, yeah, it did. But in the process of doing it, it expanded the world's distribution network and acceleration of e-commerce, which created a lot of new jobs and a lot of opportunity for creating products that were more discrete and specific, but that people now could find and buy. And so as a result, lots more products got built and designed and created by people that now had a market that wouldn't have had a market before the internet, which made commerce much bigger. And so I think of this as always an expanding sphere. So
Mm.
if you're working on this part of the sphere right now, let's say software development, right? It used to be machine language. We were using ones and zeros to program, and then it became assembler. People with machine language skills got displaced, but now you had this level of abstraction for writing stuff faster because now you had assembler. And every time that happens with software languages, you can build things faster, which means you're creating a lot more software and a lot more automation that didn't exist before, which is creating jobs. So now we're at this AI thing, right? And now AI isn't maybe replacing the need to develop software in a traditional way, maybe even in another few years, maybe displacing it completely because AI will just dynamically create the the interface you need through voice and through screens dynamically, where you don't have to build a static system behind it. Who knows, right? I can't see that far out, but I can
Mm.
imagine that it's just going to keep going. But in the process of doing that, that means that lots more stuff's going to get created a lot faster by a lot more people, which is going to create whole new opportunities for leveraging in business, which will create new jobs, new specialties, and you have to be kind of flexible. So
Mm.
if you think that um, you're a Flutter programmer and you're going to be a Flutter programmer for the next 20 years because you love that language, you're going to really struggle going forward because it's just going to change. But if you're open to the change, there's all kinds of new high value opportunities that you can leverage in technology with AI and everything else. So that's how I basically explain it to my team. They are all totally into it and absorbed by it. And that's even in the creative world, same thing. Guiding the creative process along with AI. Um, uh, it's a new world, but how many times have we heard that
Mm.
it's a new world over the last
Yeah.
30, 40 years?
Yeah. And it's interesting you use the early days with the internet as kind of part of that metaphor or that story because when AI first started kind of getting a lot of open publicity and traction, and I started playing very early on with some of them, and I immediately thought of those very early days of the internet where I saw something and I just got so excited by the possibilities, and it just sort of took me back to that time, and I thought this is exactly the same as when the internet kind of started to get traction,
Yeah,
and
like if you think of Etsy, for example,
mm,
um, right? You used to have to go to a store to find things that you would buy in Etsy, but because of things like Etsy, that created tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of businesses that
mm,
were very distinct and boutique, creating these unique things that you just didn't exist before, you couldn't find before. So it just expanded the idea, and some of those people make a lot of money from the products that they create because people from all around the world are buying their product instead of just their local neighborhood.
yeah, that's right. It used to be like somebody would make some and crafts were the traditional things there, and a lot of those are on Etsy. But traditionally, somebody would make some craft in their home workshop and take it to the local market where they might have a community of 1,000 people, and at some point
Exactly.
that's saturated anyway.
Exactly.
And,
Or you had
and
the
now,
catalog companies, but they were selling their own products, and they were
mm,
always big companies like Sears and where you could buy something remotely, sort of, from a
Yeah.
catalog.
Hmm. All right. Well, it's fascinating to look at AI in that light and also how it impacts your business. And it was wonderful to learn a lot more about the playbook and the way to quickly turn an idea into cash. I'm just aware of the time, David. I'm really enjoying the conversation, but I think given the time, it's a good point to
Yeah.
move on to the buzz, our innovation round. This is the same 5 questions that I ask of every guest, and the idea is you'll give us some really insightful answers that inspire our listener to go and do something awesome today as a result.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Learn learn how to talk to AI as it's your best friend. So
Yeah,
anybody that's not currently doing that, and I have so many examples, but I won't go into that. But that's the thing. AI should be your best friend that happens to know everything about everything. So no matter what your question is, ask your favorite AI tool about that thing.
yeah, that's I think that's something that everybody should start playing with. And I mean, I've got so many examples as well, but one I did this week, and it kind of touches on programming as well. I was looking for a tool that would sort my emails for me because I just get overwhelmed with emails. And I got to the point where, so there's the problem, and the tool doesn't exist. And I thought there must be something around. So it's probably something that you guys could build because it's
For sure.
software.
Yeah.
But I asked AI, I said, how can I automate sorting my emails so that all I see are the ones that I haven't seen before? And I can go to that list and work through them, and that makes my life a lot easier. And it
Mhm.
gave, and I said I use Gmail, and it gave me, it said you can do it with a script. And so at that point, of course, I was way out of my depth because then it's talking programming language and stuff. But
Mhm.
what I did, instead of ignoring it, I said, all right, for somebody who doesn't know how to program, give me
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
step by step process of how to do this. And I
Mhm.
did that, and I followed a playbook, right? And I followed that playbook, and it worked first time. So I have
Amazing,
my
right?
I have my tool. Yeah,
Amazing. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Mm.
Um, uh, uh, I'll give you an example that happened to me a few weekends ago. I was at at a hardware store buying something for I like to do woodworking and metalworking as a hobby. So I was there buying something for that. My wife called me. She says, I need fertilizer for my hibiscus. And I said, what fertilizer should I get? She said, it doesn't matter. Anything that says it's good for hibiscus. I thought, okay, well, I'm in one of those big box stores and there's hundreds of bags and brands, right, on across many shelves of fertilizers in the garden section. I'm like, okay, I'm reading and reading and reading, and I don't find the word hibiscus on any of the bags. So I asked ChatGPT, what kind of fertilizer should I get for hibiscus? And it told me anything that likes a lot that is a high acid kind of fertilizer. And so I'm looking and I found a couple, but I just wasn't sure. And I didn't want to buy the wrong thing and have to bring it back. So then I walked about 30 feet away, and ChatGPT released this feature a few weeks ago that if you put it on the voice mode where you're talking on your phone to ChatGPT, there's a little camera there. You tap that, and now it's looking through the front of your camera. It can see what you see. And I
Oh
said,
wow.
which fire? And we had already started this conversation with it. And I said, which fertilizer do you think would be the right one? And it said, oh, it's tonal. It's on the shelves in front of you. And I said, what color? What does the bag look like? They said it's got red borders with white in the middle. And so I found a bag just like that. Didn't say tonal. I walked right up to it and I said, this doesn't look like the right one. And Chat said, no, that's not the right one. It's on the second shelf from the top, and it's over to the left. And so I went like this with it. I turned my camera so that it was facing to the shelves over the left. It said, I see it. It's two sets of shelves down. So I walked over and I found it right away. I said, is this what you mean? She said, that's the one for hibiscus that you want to use. I was like, okay, that's life changing. I don't know about you, but
It
that's
is.
kind of life
Yeah,
changing. So
I did.
you could be like looking at a supermarket and you're looking at 100 different brands of canned foods and you're looking for one or a wine. And so you could just say, chat, I'm looking for this brand, and it'll tell you exactly where it is.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that it could do that, so I'm going to have to play with that one.
Oh, it's really, really cool. Yeah.
Hmm. Excellent. All right, now, what's the best way you've done to develop new ideas, David?
The best way to develop new ideas is related to problems I'm struggling with myself.
Hmm.
So, or my team is struggling with. As I try to step back a little bit and say, is this a problem, that discrete problem that we can abstract and do something about? And I'll give you an example of that. About 3 weeks ago, and my team now they're all kind of into this as well now. We were talking about problems that we have with project management. We're always looking for ways to improve. This is a mission that we've been on for 17 years, or actually 18 years now, is to never be good enough. They never feel like we're good enough. So we're always looking for ways of automating and creating protocols and procedures and standards and finding ways to automate those things so it doesn't create a burden on team members, but improves our consistency and predictability and speed and quality. So, and one of those is in project management. And we've already done a lot to make project management better. But one of the areas is always tracking bugs and feature requests on big projects across many different releases. Because what happens is, if some of our clients, even the ones we give access to Jira, which is our project management and test management tool, bug tracking, we give them access. Some clients, you can give them access, they want that. Others don't want anything to do with it, which is fine. Then they just send us emails and we have to document those things. And what happens is you'll document the same bug reported by different people over a different period of time in different ways. You end up with duplicates and triplicates of the same thing, feature requests, bug reports, and then you have all this time managing client requests in terms of like, when's that release coming out? I noticed it's being delayed. What's causing that delay? Oh, what about this bug? Was already released. I didn't realize, whatever. All these requests, right? And it's tedious. And then at the end of every major release, we go back through the system and we try to clean out all the pollution from all these duplicates. And and somebody on the team said, what if we had a voice interface that the customers could use? And then, of course, that started a flurry of discussions, of ideas, because not only do the customers want that would use this, but the team would use this. They had
Mm.
an app on their phone that had a voice interface that we would train on that customer's project. So it would digested all that customer's documentation and requirements and diagrams, as well as every single bug and feature request. So it would know that client and the project and all the build plans and all the schedules and everything. So the client says, I found a bug on this screen. And if the client didn't give the chat enough information, it would come back and ask it to clarify this. What is the nature of this bug? How much critical is it? Things like that. And then it would quickly find all the related bugs. I found a couple that I think are related to this, and another one I think may be a duplicate, and then read them back to the person. And the person can say, yeah, that is the same bug, and change the priority level, or say, what build is that planned in? And it would tell it, and then it say, okay, I want to increase the priority, and then chat would come back and say, that's fine, but that will delay release of this build by a day. Is that acceptable? But things like that. And all of a sudden,
Mm.
the client has a personal relationship with the project management system
Mm.
instead of this distant kind of relationship that causes development to always get involved in every exchange. And the team will have this as well, so that they can report a bug or say, hey, I fixed the bug related to this issue, and they may not remember the ticket number, but it will find the bug for them, or find two or three that are similar and say, which bug is that? And then it'll make the update and the comments, and and then push it out to now QA to go test it, things like that. This is huge. This just came up a few weeks ago. So we've already come up with a design document for building this and sort of a priority list, and it's under development. We have 4 projects like this going on right now, internal automation related projects that all of which will turn into SaaS products because everybody else we know needs this as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's always, I mean, you talked earlier about the playbook and product market fit, but always a good start to determine, is there a market for that, is, well, I have this problem. I need this problem solved, and
Mhm.
there is no adequate solution right now. And surely there must be other people that have a similar problem.
Oh yeah, I think
Yeah.
I haven't heard of anybody building this. I am sure other people are doing something like this, but I don't know of anybody doing it. I don't know of a product out there that addresses this issue in this way yet. Um,
Mm.
so we might be the first, or we might just be building it for our own value, but
Yeah.
there's enough value in it for us to do it independently. It also gives us incredible marketing tool when we're showing customers how we run projects, and they are going to get this app where they can speak directly to the project management system.
Hmm. Excellent. All right. Next question of the buzz round. What's a favorite resource you use most often?
I use ChatGPT in its various forms, as a resource. I use that really more than any other resource, just because maybe because it was first. It's very
Mm.
consumable the way they've designed it on the phone. So I use the deep research tool a lot, and that is a killer product when you need more than just a quick answer on something, but you need it really well thought through, well researched, um, with links to where that research came from. The deep research tool, of course, it was the first one with deep research. Now a bunch of them have it. Uh, so we use that a lot. We're using for code generation, we're using Cursor. We use as our editor with Cursor rules and the chat and the AI plugin, and we're using Claude MCP, which is the components that we're building to automate so much of the development process and speed things up, both development and automated testing. And so, but ChatGPT is probably my go-to app.
Yeah.
And with that video feature, it's like a killer app.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one I certainly need to try out. That's quite amazing, the story you told there. And
Mhm.
yeah, of course, we'll include the ChatGPT link in the show notes for people that may not have found that website yet.
You have to have the paid version of it, but
Yeah.
which is $20 a month. It's not
Mm.
too expensive, but that may be expensive for some people. It's worth it though. All you have to, if you're just ever at a grocery store one time and you can't find something on a shelf,
Yeah.
it'll pay for itself as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. What's the best way to keep a project on track? We've
The
talked a
best,
little bit about this, but maybe you could summarize again.
the best way to keep a project on track is to be an animal about the details of the project. So document everything. So not everybody can do this because it takes years to really develop the discipline and the protocols in a team manner to work this way. But we document everything. We do a lot of analysis on everything we're going to build, a lot of critical thinking. We put together detailed plans. We document all the work that we do on a daily basis. And that's all gets reported to all our clients at every week, in a very detailed status report. And every month with their invoices are the detailed daily timesheets. And so to be able to make that promise and give those to clients, you have to be very detailed in documenting everything. So we always know exactly what build is scheduled out and when it's scheduled for the next 3 or 4 builds, 3 or 4 weeks out. The major releases, what's going into each one of those, um, creating really accurate estimates. All these things are complex and take time and are expensive to do when you first do them. And then you work at systems to efficiently deliver these things more and more inexpensively. For example, the estimates we do are very detailed and very elaborate, but we pride ourselves on being really accurate with our estimates. It's one of the things I think we do at a real exceptional level. But it took us years to develop this approach to doing estimates. And now we're building an AI model that will mimic this estimation process because it's inexpensive. We want to make it much easier. And another product we think that the market needs. So, um, and it's easy for us to articulate how much that process costs us every time we do an estimate for a project. So it's all in the details to keep a project on track, have a iron grip of all the details.
And documented. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really great advice. And I'm learning that, I mean, I'm a stickler for documenting things, but I keep getting reminded of it all the time when I've missed a detail in my documentation and I go back to revisit it and I think, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Or why isn't that working? There's a small detail missing.
Let me add one more thing to that too. Your plan has to be incredibly detailed and well thought out to begin with, right? And then you have to have the discipline to stay on task and keep the scope creep out. So, and very often that just has to do with being able to say, are we going to make more money faster if we change the scope in this way? Or is this product solution fit scope creep? Or is this product market fit scope creep? And if it's product market fit, that means you can charge more for that thing immediately. If it's product solution fit, it means it'll make the product more fun and easier to use. And people are going to want this and they're going to say they need it, but will they buy it without it? So that helps keep it on track and keep the scope creep from sneaking in.
Great advice. All right. Final question of the buzz round. The number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves.
The number one thing anybody can do to differentiate, I know how we differentiate ourselves, but I always talk about the fact that we're an exceptional, hyper exceptional, actually it says that on my website, hyper exceptional software development team. And I don't expect anybody to believe me just because I say that. That's sort of like when somebody says, trust me, that's sort of code for, you can't trust me, right? So we have evidence. I always say, let me show you what I mean by that. Because if you work in an exceptional manner, you create artifacts as a natural output of what you do that other teams that work in a typical manner don't produce because they just don't do things at the level of detail and in a way where it's consistent enough where they can show the history of how they do these things. So we show people how we do our estimates. We show people the level of detail in our status or our weekly status reports and meetings that we have with our customers, which shows estimates versus actuals and the variance between them on a weekly and on a monthly basis. I don't know of other teams that do that. We show evidence like how we do our invoicing, which includes the daily timesheets from all the team members that they're being billed for. And other companies don't do that. They either have a blended rate, or if they don't have a blended rate, then if you ask them, well, why did this person spend that much time this month? It seems like a lot of hours. They have to go back and compile that data. We don't do that because I don't like the way that feels to be asked that question. We just include it on with our invoices attached, so our clients can audit us every single month without asking us to give them any information. We go to an extreme detail when we're doing functional prototypes or design prototypes, because we want to understand all of the nuances around each workflow before we start to build the product so that the developer knows what the user experience is supposed to look like in exacting terms when they deliver something, and the client knows exactly what they're committing to and what they should expect when they're given something to start to test. And all these things for many different projects across many years, I can show clients. And so to me, that sets us apart, because other people don't. I can't show these things.
Yeah.
They may be able
Yeah.
to show one or two of these things, but they can't show all this stuff, and definitely not across lots of projects. Um,
So that's
so
a
that,
really,
yeah,
really
that's
high
it.
level of transparency.
Exactly. Right.
Hmm.
So high that I don't have to work. I don't like the way it feels when somebody says, "Why did that person work that many hours?" Or
Yeah.
"How did I get charged for this?" It's like, you have all the information there. You know exactly what it was. You just look at any weekly status report, because we covered it in there. You have it all. That doesn't mean that I'm going to have a problem if they do ask me.
Hmm.
Right? I'm not going to sit there and go, "You have it, so I'm not going to tell you." But
Yeah.
I never want them to feel like I'm hiding something from them,
Hmm.
right? And so we're yes, transparency is like a key.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz round, David, and thanks for the conversation so far. It's been really fun. We've touched on a lot of different areas, but very interesting stuff came out, and I've learned a lot. So, where can people find out more about you, about techies, about the work you do, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared with us today?
Oh, I appreciate you asking me that. So you can reach me by going to techies.com, and techies, for people that are listening to this, is spelled TEKYZ. um, TEKYZ.com. If you've made it all the way to the end of the podcast, I'll even give you my email, even though it won't be in the show links. That's David at techies.com. And I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. So please reach out to me and just put a note, saw you on Jürgen's podcast, and would love to chat with you.
Excellent. That's great. And we'll include the techies link in the show notes, not the email.
Yeah.
So you would have had to listen to get David's email. All right. Well, what action would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today, David?
Um, uh, if you haven't really embraced AI, I would that would be the biggest thing. Start to embrace it as a companion in your daily life, to make your life to make your life better, and to
Hmm.
make it easier, and to enrich you, because there's so much information now that at your fingertips, that can be delivered to you in such a consumable manner through AI, that you really should just embrace it.
Hmm. Yeah, excellent call to action. And I think I should do an episode just on um, maybe a group chat of people and get examples of how people use AI. I think that would add a lot of value.
That would be a
So
great that would be a great one. Yeah.
you've given me an idea. I'll have to make a note of that when we hang up.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today, David. I've really enjoyed this immensely, and I've learnt a lot as well, and got a few ideas like that one at the end as well.
Cool.
All the best for the future, and please do stay in touch.
Thank you, Jürgen, for having me on your show. I really had fun.